Imagine if the place that's supposed to be your home, your place of rest, turns into a nightmare every night. What would you do if the sound of invisible footsteps, mysterious shadows, and soft knocks at the door became part of your daily routine? I never believed in stories about wandering spirits, until I experienced it myself. It all began when I moved into a house that seemed peaceful, with a beautiful front yard, but behind that serene yard, there was a dark secret haunting every corner of this house. And night after night, that peace slowly turned into unimaginable terror. I never believed in ghosts. To me, they were just stories to scare children. But everything changed when I moved into this house. On the very first night, I started feeling that something wasn't right. That night, I sat on the front porch, enjoying the cool breeze and the peace that was hard to find in the city. But suddenly, everything felt different. The air turned colder than usual. The leaves, which had been still moments ago, began to rustle as if someone was walking past them. Footsteps. Yes, footsteps. But no one was there. The next night, I was awakened by a strange sound. It was like someone was tapping something in the front yard. When I opened the window, there was nothing there. Just darkness and the shadows of trees swaying in the wind. Yet, the tapping sound continued, soft but persistent, as if it was coming from the ground in the front yard. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt like I was being watched. I tried to ignore these feelings, trying to stay rational. But when I returned to the porch on the third night, something made my skin crawl. A shadow. At the far end of the yard, I saw the figure of someone standing still, facing my house. But when I blinked, the shadow vanished. I tried to shake it off, but that night, I couldn't sleep peacefully. I thought it was all just my imagination until the fourth night when I saw her with my own eyes. There was a woman outside my bedroom window. Her hair was long and wet, her face pale, and her eyes hollow. I froze, unable to move from my bed. She didn't move either, just stared directly at me. And when I mustered the courage to stand, she disappeared into the night as if swallowed by the darkness. The next morning, I found footprints in the damp soil of my front yard. They led straight to my front door, stopping just in front of it. Oddly enough, it hadn't rained that night, and there were no signs of anyone entering my yard. Whoever left those footprints was clearly not human. I tried to get answers from the neighbors, but they all seemed reluctant to speak. It was as if they were hiding something from me. I asked an elderly neighbor who lived next door, and in a hushed voice, he said something I'll never forget. "There's a restless spirit in your house. Be careful." As the nights went on, the more I felt her presence. The strange noises, the tapping, and the sightings became more frequent. On the seventh night, I woke up to a loud sound at my front door. I walked cautiously towards it, terrified of what I might find, and when I opened the door, nothing was there. But something had been left behind. A small wooden doll with a terrifying face, as if the doll was glaring at me with hatred. I decided to seek help. I couldn't stay in this house alone any longer. I contacted a paranormal expert recommended by a friend. He came to my house and immediately said that there was a wandering spirit here, a spirit that was not at peace due to a tragic death. And the front yard of my house was where it all began. The paranormal expert revealed that a tragedy had occurred here years ago. A young woman was brutally murdered, and her body was buried in the front yard of this house. Her spirit still roamed, seeking justice and haunting anyone who dared live here. I was horrified. Could this be why I kept seeing a woman at my window? I knew I had to do something. The last night before I decided to leave, I heard crying in the front yard with trembling hands. I went outside and saw the woman standing under the large tree at the edge of the yard. I knew what I had to do. With the help of the paranormal expert, we performed a ritual to free her from her pain and revenge. But would that be enough to stop her terror? A few days after the ritual, the house felt calmer. There were no more mysterious knocks at night, no more footsteps in the yard. I began to feel relieved, thinking it was all over. But one night, as I sat on the porch, enjoying the peace that had long eluded me, the air turned cold again, colder than before. And then, I heard that familiar sound, this low, dreadful tapping. I stood up quickly, scanning the area. There, at the far end of the yard, the woman appeared again. This time, she looked more real, closer. Her empty gaze pierced through me. I knew something terrible was coming. She hadn't left. That night became a living nightmare. Every time I tried to sleep, her shadow appeared in every corner of the house. Sometimes I saw her at the window, sometimes at the end of the hallway, just standing still, staring at me. The more time passed, the clearer and more real she became, as if she wasn't just an apparition anymore but something far more dangerous. Her presence felt stronger, more uncontrollable. I began to feel trapped in an endless terror. This house, this yard, seemed to have become a prison, binding me to this restless spirit. The next night, I found something strange on my porch. Another wooden doll, similar to the one I found before, but this one was bigger and more terrifying. Its face looked carved in anger, and in the doll's hand, there was something dangling. A small rope looped around its neck. I knew this wasn't a coincidence. This doll wasn't just a doll, it was a message from the spirit still haunting me. I felt choked just looking at it. The spirit was still angry, and she wanted something from me. But what? The following night, something strange happened. As I drifted into sleep, I had a dream, though it didn't feel like a dream at all. I saw a horrific event from the past. I was in the yard of this house, but everything looked different. The house was newly built, and in the yard, I saw a young woman. She looked terrified, running frantically for safety. Behind her, a man chased her with fury in his eyes. The woman screamed for help, but no one heard her. Then, right under the large tree at the edge of the yard, she fell. The man approached her and, without hesitation, attacked her viciously. Blood poured from her, and before I could react, I woke up drenched in cold sweat. I couldn't stay silent any longer. dream felt too real, like a message the spirit wanted me to understand. I returned to the paranormal expert who had helped me before and told him about my dream. With a serious look, he said the spirit of the woman was showing me what really happened on the night of her death. She had been murdered brutally, and her death had never been avenged. She wants you to find the truth, he said quietly. But the expert also warned me. The spirit was growing stronger, and if I didn't find what she wanted, my life could be in danger. I began investigating the history of the house. From the records I found, it turned out that a woman had indeed gone missing in this area years ago. Her name was Rena, a young woman who lived not far from here. People assumed she had run away or disappeared, but her body was never found. I was certain that she was the spirit haunting me now. The question was, who killed her, and why? I tried to dig deeper, asking the older residents around here, but most were unwilling to talk. It was as if there was something they wanted to hide. However, one old man who lived far from my house finally opened up. Don't dig up the past, young man. Those who seek the truth never end well. That night, the terror reached its peak. I heard a loud crash from the front yard, as if something had been thrown to the ground. With my heart pounding, I opened the door and was shocked to see the woman standing there. But this time, she wasn't just standing in the distance. She was right in front of me, her face pale and filled with rage, her hair wet and disheveled, while her hollow eyes stared directly at me. She slowly opened her mouth, and with a hoarse voice that shattered my nerves, she said, "Find him, or I will take you." I realized there was something I had to find to end all of this. In unbearable fear, I began searching every corner of the yard, trying to find a clue. As I dug beneath the tree where the woman always appeared, my shovel struck something hard. A small box was buried beneath the soil. Inside, there were pieces of old letters and a faded photograph. The photograph showed Rena with a man. I didn't recognize him, but the expression on his face made my skin crawl. Was he the killer? I knew I had to find the man in the photograph. With the help of the paranormal expert, we finally tracked him down. It turned out he still lived in this village, but for years he had lived under a new identity. When I confronted him, he initially denied everything. But when I showed him the photograph, his face turned pale. "I didn't mean to kill her," he said, his voice trembling with regret. It turned out that they had been engaged, but a terrible argument led him to lose control, ending in a horrific tragedy. With his confession, I felt this was what the spirit had been waiting for. We held a final ritual, offering prayers and revealing the justice that had finally come to light. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace enveloping my yard. But even though justice had been served, I always wonder, has the spirit truly gone? Or is she just waiting, watching from the shadows of this yard? This story serves as a reminder that unresolved pasts can leave haunting marks. I'll never forget those nights when a wandering spirit threatened my life in the seemingly peaceful front yard.